Hello and welcome to this video in which I would like to discuss a peculiar strategy that I've noted that especially HIkaru Nakamura uses, but it has also been used by other players as well. Nevertheless, I will take examples from his games simply because they are more famous and he is more famous and notable. Now, the strategy that I'm going to talk about is actually quite, I would even say, cynical one because it consists of the following, especially playing with the white pieces. Nakamura would choose an openly drawing line. So in the examples I'm going to present, this will be the 4 knights Scotch against e5. So the opening is notorious that it's actually practically a silent draw offer, especially as there are many lines that end up in dead drawn or even repetitions. And many games have been played in those lines and they have ended in draws. So what actually Nakamura does is just he goes for those lines, not minding to make a quick draw with the white pieces. But now the curious thing happens. His opponents, most likely, especially in the past, not expecting him to go for openly for draws with white, they concentrate their preparation on other lines, more critical lines where they have to remember uh, moves to let's say equalize and so on, but ones that are more complicated. So they neglect to revise, that's my guess at least, the drawing lines and the forced draws that actually Nakamura is going for. So what happens is that in the game, Nakamura just plays quickly his intended preparation, and basically he's playing for two results. If the opponent knows the forcing drawing variation, then it will be a quick draw. Okay, rest day, whatever. Enjoy the day. But if the opponent forgets the drawing line, then suddenly Nakamura gets winning chances, and especially in these two examples, he successfully converted both in games that were actually very important. So let me show you these examples. As I mentioned, the opening in question here was the four knights in the Scotch, so e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. This is the start of his game against Caruana at the Grand Swiss tournament, last Grand Swiss tournament. The other game was the normal one, starting with the Scotch with knight c6, d4, e4, knight d4, knight f6, and knight c3, both times leading to the same uh, positions. So knight f6, knight c3, knight c6, d4. This is the 4 knight Scotch. Takes on d4, knight d4, bishop b4, take on c6, bc, bishop d3, d5, e5, castles, castles. So here, this is the starting position. Black can also start with cd5 instead of castles, and normally it would just transpose. But players have recently started taking starting with castling simply because dc6 is a bit too dangerous in view of bishop g4 and then rook e8 and so on. So that's why white castles. And here in this position, the games diverged. I will start with the more recent one, played against world champion Gukesh at the recently finished Norway chess tournament. And in that game, Gukesh played the most forcing move, bishop g4, which is known to lead to these like really forcing draws, dead drawn endgames, and so forth. But let's not jump to conclusions. Let's see what happened. f3, bishop h5, yeah, and now bishop g5, played by Nakamura. This is the second most popular move in the position, especially as the most popular d takes c6. It really vacuums off all the pieces of the board after queen d4 check. Yeah, black is temporarily 2 pawns down, but he will regain them. So king h1, bishop c3, first pawn regained, bc3, queen c3, and then the second pawn will be regained. Yeah, rook b1, bishop g6, exchanging rooks and robbing white of the advantage of the bishop pair in the process, and then black will take the pawn on c6. After bishop takes g6, hg, bishop b2, queen c6, bishop f6, gf6. It's obviously a dead draw, which did not prevent Nakamura from um, uh, winning against Vladimir Fedoseev in an online game. So that's the most popular move. But actually, Nakamura went bishop g5, and he followed a game between Nepomniachtchi and Nakamura and Sorian Caruana at the Toronto Candidates Tournament. So cd5, take on f6, queen f6, take on d5, take on b2, rook b1, Okay, now the bishop is hanging, so the only move is bishop c5 check to get away from the attack. King h1 and queen e5. And again, it's the this is like state of modern theory where you have some flurry of activity, temporary one, but with precise play, all this just evaporates and the position ends in a draw. So, for example, one such move is f4, attacking the queen. Bishop takes d1, take the queen, f takes e5, bishop draws back, knight c7, rook c8. So now white won a pawn, but with a pair of bishops and somewhat weak queenside pawns, and the e5 pawn being isolated one. Black shouldn't have problems holding the draw, but here's the curious case. After rook b7, it was none other than Magnus Carlsen who forgot the theory here. So he should have gone rook fd8 first, and only then bishop e6. Whereas after the immediate bishop e6, knight s6, f takes e6, exchange of one rooks, rook f8, bishop c4, white was actually much better and had some winning chances, even though it finished in a draw eventually in the game Duda Carlsen. So even Carlsen, especially at faster time controls, fails to remember his theory. And this is the key point here, and it's something that both modern players and especially Fischer in the past started complaining that chess has become a memory test. Who remembers their theory, who can quickly play their preparation on the board, that player is actually safe, let's say, yeah. And in this case, we see actually Nakamura using that advantage. He knew his drawing lines better, and his opponents didn't. They committed mistakes, and he won the games. So instead of f4, he goes rook e1, attacking the queen, queen d6, knight e7 check, king h8, queen e2. And here in the game, Nepomniachtchi Caruana played the correct move, bishop g6, trying to exchange bishops, whereas after knight takes g6, he recaptured it in the correct way, h takes g6, and the game was quickly drawn. After queen e5, the queens were exchanged, and the game was quickly drawn. So basically a dull, even you could say, pre-arranged game. Not pre-arranged because the players spoke to each other, but simply because one player went for a drawing line, the other one knew the line, and the game was inevitably drawn. However, in the game against Gukesh, Gukesh played rook a b8 first, which is still fine. Yeah, exchanging one pair of rooks, queen e4 now, threatening mate. Yeah, bishop g6, knight takes g6, and now comes the curious moment. In this position, Gukesh made a big mistake, big strategical mistake, by capturing with the f pawn. Now, at first sight, looks natural because it erects this barricade against the queen and the bishop, and it opens the f file. But the problem here is that white has this really simple, straightforward plan after preparation to play the moves h4, h5, and then this barricade won't be so strong as it appears at first sight. So this is actually a big mistake, as after h takes g6, the game would have just been drawn with not many moves left. Take on b8, let's say g3. Now this plan of h4, h5 really doesn't create any problems because black can simply walk away with the king. King g8, king g2, rook d8, h4, king f8. And if necessary, f5 can also be played, and it's just a draw. Yeah, it's basically a fortress for black here. So it's unclear why, at least I haven't heard an explanation why Gukesh took with the f-pawn, whether he underestimated this plan h4, h5 or for whatever reason. But from this moment onwards, it's just one-way traffic, and Nakamura won fairly comfortably. So I'll go quickly over the rest of the game. As I explained, the plan is really straightforward, h4, h5, I take on g6 and play against the black king. Here, after the exchange of rooks, rook b8, g3, preparing king g2, h4, h5, and so on. Another problem for black is that there are problems with the back rank. So black now maybe would have wished to keep one rook on the board and at least not suffer from back rank problems. But with the one rook, there are always threats like queen e8 or rook e8, as we will see later, and problems along the back rank. And this will be black's downfall, the problems with the back rank and the b1 h7 diagonal. It's basically an attack on the king. So rook f8, king g2, bishop b6, h4, queen c5, f4, a standard ploy. placing the pawns on dark squares, limiting the mobility of black's bishop, and then preparing h5. Yeah, the king can also hide on h3 if necessary. For example, queen f2, king h3, there is no danger there. So queen f5. And now an instructive moment. As we noted, black has a weak king, both on the back rank and on this diagonal after h5. So white correctly avoids the exchange of queens, as even winning a pawn after queen f5, g5, bishop f5 would actually be a relief for black after g6 and king g7. White obviously keeps winning chances, but this is, I think, a bad way to go about it. So queen c4, avoiding the exchange of queens, queen f6, rook e5, rook in front of queen, the queen will come back and then the rook can come to e8, queen d6, c3, just covering the d4 square just in case. So queen d3, queen d4 is no longer, or bishop d4 an idea. Queen a3, king h3, now some shuffling, queen d6, because players were probably getting to the well, time control, after which they get 10 seconds increment. That's another topic that's probably worth discussing elsewhere. It will take more time if I start rambling about the 10-second increment in a classical tournament, but okay. Queen a3, king h3, queen d6, and finally queen e4. Yeah, bishop c5, king g2 now, queen b6, king h3, queen d6, and now finally h5. Yeah, so that's the white basically maximized the position of his pieces and pushes h5 now. Check on d7, king g2, bishop d6, rook e6, yeah, and rook f6. Black obviously cannot touch the pawn on g6 because of mate, so he's just waiting for white to take on g6. Rook f6, rook e8, and now bishop f8. So Gukesh decides to keep the rook to control over the g6 square, but even the exchange of rooks after rook f8, bishop f8, hg6, h6, after queen a8, queen d6, for example, and something like a4. Yeah, note that the queen can never take the bishop because there is mate. Sooner or later, black will end up in a zugzwang because the queen will have to defend both the bishop on f8 and the weak pawns on the queen side. Note that the king, whenever it comes to g8, some bishop c4 will happen and the queen will have to be forced back. So black cannot hold this long term. So that's why Gukesh played bishop f8, but now queen a8, we see the problems on the back rank. Queen d6, defending the bishop, rook d8, queen e7, take on g6, take on g6. By taking on g6, black at least tries to avoid back rank problems by being able to escape to h7, but now there are problems actually on the h file, as we will see. Queen c8, and the problem is queen h3 check, and when the queen goes to g8, there is bishop c4 winning material. So queen c5, bishop e4, preparing bishop d5 to give the check. So g5 now, but it's basically over. The fg5, queen f2 is just one check. Queen h3, yeah. If queen f1, bishop g2 saves the bishop, the king from checks. Rook f7, g6 now, rook f6, and queen g4. Finally preparing for the deadly check on the h file, followed by bishop d5. So after check on f1, bishop g2, queen c1, queen h4, queen h6, bishop d5. Gukesh resigned because of the bishop f7. He will lose the bishop on f8. So it was a, let's say, 50-move game, but basically from the moment Gukesh took fg6, the scenario was set for the remainder of the game, and the remaining 30 moves were actually conversion for Nakamura. So actually fantastic conversion. In fact, it was just really well played, not allowing any chances, and it's a great way to learn how to play in these positions where you, without hurry, you prepare as thoroughly as possible before executing the main plan, which was h5, take on g6, and then using the weaknesses on the back rank, and as it turned out, the h file. So now we'll go back to the position on move 9 and take the move cd5, and now we explore the game Nakamura Caruana from the Grand Swiss. h3 by Hikaru, bishop e6. Obviously there are many theoretical moves. Caruana goes for a line with bishop e6 and queen f3 c5. Now rook d1 and bishop takes c3. Yeah, this is a kind of a forcing line for black where he gives up the pair of bishops after bc3, but the idea is to go queen a5 and create counterplay against white's weakened queen side. Bishop g5, attacking the knight on f6, knight e4 now, forcing the exchange of white's bishop on d3 and entering a position with the opposite colored bishops. Again, by the way, take on e4, d4, queen g3, creating ideas like bishop f6, king h8, now a4, removing the bishop from the a2 square and grabbing some space on the queen side. Rook fe8, rook d6, old theory, by the way. So up to here, but I was there witnessing the game in the playing hall, and Nakamura was playing very fast, whereas Caruana was thinking already, and it was clear that he did not remember the theory and trying to figure things out over the board. But it turned out that even for such a player like Caruana, it was hard to figure things out over the board. The position turned out to be trickier than he anticipated. So here he commits the first mistake by playing the move h6. It was better to play f6, again, putting more pawns in the center, controlling the e5 square and limiting the mobility of the bishop on g5. h6 is a mistake because after bishop f4, now bishop e5 becomes an issue. Yeah, he goes rook d7, which is the second mistake. Rook a d8 was the only way to stay in the game. After rook e7, after queen e3 now, we see the other problem with the pawn on h6, which is the possible sacrifices on h6, and also the pawn on e4 is hanging. So already this is lost for black objectively. Again, amazing thing, you know, like banging out theory, drawn position, but players, both Caruana here and Gukesh in the previous game, could not understand the problems that could arise in positions with opposite colored bishops. So don't just automatically assume that opposite colored bishops are a draw. You could see even the best players misevaluating them. So Caruana played rook c8, but after bishop h6, it's basically conversion time. So f6, the bishop cannot really be taken, yeah, because after queen h6, queen g5, there is this threat on the rook. On e7, so f6, queen e4 now, attacking the bishop on e6, queen c3, rook d1, rook c8, defending the bishop, rook d8 now. So again, the bishop cannot be taken, gh6, take on e8, rook e8, queen g6, attacking the rook, attacking the h6 pawn, rook f8, queen h6, king g8, queen g6, king h8, and now rook d3. And it's decisive, queen h6, rook g3 is coming. So Caruana didn't take the bishop, went rook bishop g8, but queen h4 now, take on c2, rook 1 d3. Yeah, it's basically again attack on the king. Yeah, so that black cannot defend against. Bishop h7, rook d7, g5, queen g3, check on b1, king h2, queen f5, take on e7, take on d8, and queen c7. So you see, it's a common law, let's say, in strategy, that in positions with opposite colored bishops, king safety and attack are very important, simply because the side attacking is attacking with an extra piece. You can see here white is attacking on the dark squares, and black's light squared bishop is completely useless here. So white has an extra piece, and therefore that's why attacks are so potent in these positions. So queen f4, trying to exchange queens, but after queen f4, g4, bishop g7, this is important, taking on f6. Why? Because king g8, bishop f6, white now will be able to create two connected passed pawns on the king side, and this will decide the game, because the dark squared bishop can easily control black's passed pawn, and the two connected passed pawns will just move forward. So bishop b1, check on g7, king f8, take on d8, take on g7, bishop g5, attacking a third pawn, but okay, f3, and now of course not gf3, which just messes up the white phalanx, but g4, and these are the connected passed pawns. So king comes to g3, and the pawns will march onwards, whereas the bishop will come to c3 to stop the passed pawn on c5 and support its own pawns. So c4, king g3, threatening the pawn on f3, bishop e4, bishop d2, and the bishop is coming on c3, and then everything is coming, king f4, g5, h4, h5, g6, and king g5, h6, and the pawns will promote without any problem, and here Caruana resigned. So to wrap up, yeah, I mean, I would say, practical strategy to play for a win when you don't mind the draw. This is actually very important. Caruana did not mind the draw starting the game in both cases, but he in fact managed to win thanks to his opponent's, let's say, failure to revise their files. So had they been able to reproduce the moves that led to a draw, the games would have finished in draw. But like as it was, they both failed to do so, and they also failed in the evaluation of these positions with opposite colored bishops, which actually led to two very nice, very instructive wins by Hikaru Nakamura. So okay, guys, I hope you enjoy these videos and Nakamura's winning strategy. Yeah, in case you did, make sure you check out my Chessable courses. You can subscribe to my Substack, where you get weekly newsletters with links to the weekly videos. And in case you haven't done so already, make sure you smash that subscribe button. That's something I'm pretty sure you know I've picked up from Nakamura. If working for him, maybe it's working for me. So you keep smashing that, subscribing, and let's keep the game growing together with my channel, of course. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Cheers.